We've got some people coming in. Welcome, everyone, to this AVIL webinar on Earth Day. Uh, we're going to kick off very shortly. I'm your host today. I'm Joelle. I'm the Policy and Evaluation Specialist at AVIL. I use they, them pronouns. I'm joined by my fellow panelists, Candice and Emily. Candice, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Candice. I work at the Injecting Centre in Uniting MSEEK in King's Cross in Sydney. I also do some consultancy work and peer supervision with peer workers and consult to the districts on improving their services from a consumer perspective. Hi, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Emily, would you
Thank
like
you.
to introduce yourself?
Sure, Joel. Hi everyone, I'm Emily Ebden. I think a lot of people do know me, but I work for AVIL as a Hep C campaign and capacity building lead. But I'm also the president of TUSL, the Tasmanian Drug User Org. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Before we get into the discussion, I've just wanted to a little bit of housekeeping that this session will be recorded. Um, uh, if you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function throughout the webinar, and we will come back to those questions. Just a reminder that we expect respectful dialogue in if you're using the Q&A, and that bad behavior is not tolerated, and you will be removed if that in that unlikely circumstance, because and that closed captions are available today. I'm coming from Barrambin country, and that's the Turrbal people in Bowen Hills in Brisbane, in Queensland. Um, Emily and Candice, what land are you coming from?
Well, I'm coming from Lutruwita in Nipalina, Hobart, the lands of the Muwinina and Palawa peoples.
And I'm on Darug land today in the Blue Mountains. I'm not sure of the people or clans yet. I'm new to the area, sorry.
That's
Terrible.
okay. Yeah, look, and everywhere we are around Australia, we're on Aboriginal lands, and that I pay respects to the elders past and present, and that sovereignty was never ceded. Um, Yeah, so Earth Day. What is Earth Day? Well, Earth Day, the first Earth Day was in 1970, and it was the aim was to mobilize people, bring people together toward the environmental protection uh, movement, and that's today, Earth Day. And we thought we wanted to draw a link between, or have a conversation where we're drawing the link between the environmental protection movement and the drug user movement. It's not always a likely or an obvious alignment. There's certainly a lot of dialogue around uh, sort of the privilege of climate change that people who use drugs, or people who are on low incomes or live in areas of cities in decline, that we don't care about climate change, and I think that that's a misnomer, because um, we're some of the people who use drugs are some of the most first affected in terms of where we live in the world, but also the kind of the social and cultural circumstances that we find ourselves in. Um, we're going to start off with the kind of the bigger picture, kind of thinking about the global, and then we want to bring it down to the hyper local, so that people feel like, maybe there are ways that you're already contributing to environmental protection that that aren't as obvious as it seems. And I thought, with a changing climate, probably the thing that's going to be most impacted is cultivation of drugs that come from plants. So things like cannabis and opiates. Yeah, so maybe we start the discussion with like kind of what might yeah, what might those climate risks be at a kind of global level?
Should I jump in?
Yeah, go if you want, Emily. Yeah,
Sorry, Candice. I just thought, well, being from Tasmania, well, one, we have a really strong environmental identity, and have a big history of environmental activism. And there's a reason for that because we actually have one of the best climates for growing psychoactive plants. So we historically, for a long time, I think my data used to be that Tasmania's poppy industry supplied 80% of medicinal morphine globally. That industry has diversified a little and it does fluctuate. So I've heard 60% now, but it's still roughly 50% of the raw opiate material that goes into illicit opiate medications globally comes from Tasmania. So, um, so we are consumers, but we're also a big part of the supply chain as well. So I'm often thinking of those in those ways of what happened if we lost the poppy industry through climate crisis. We also should, in my opinion, have an amazing, healthy cannabis growing industry because um, I was talking to some of my peers down here, Nick being one of them from Hobart, and he made such a good point that any mainlander that comes to Tas, he always talks about how we grow the best pot, the best weed. But we have an invisible medical and um or other kind of legitimate dispensary system or anything like that. And most people would know we also don't really we're not known to have a steady heroin supply, although that changes and shifts, but not like other places. And I often wonder, I was talking to Nick about this too, do we kind of have the optics of not having an opiate problem because we have this industry? I don't know. It's just a theory. But just looking at it that way, and not only the cannabis as a potential and the opiates already a massive industry that could be affected, but we're also known for having amazing mushrooms as well, like an amazing mushroom growing environment down here, the golden tops and everything. So there's so many different environments that could be affected. So that's just my first thoughts hearing you say that.
yeah, yeah. I think you make a really good point that yeah, and it's such an interesting conundrum that it's like there's like a legitimate puppy industry in Tasmania, and it's harder to get things like heroin. Um, yeah, and so yeah, then we're kind of reliant on those international markets and heroin kind of coming to Australia in not from Tasmania, from internationally. And so I mean, I think we saw with the COVID-19 pandemic that even those global supply chains can get interrupted, and uh and so we know firsthand that purity and quality and even what was available changed because of the borders shutting. What are some ways that that peers adapted in that situation that might kind of give us some hints about how we might adapt in the future?
Any thoughts, Candice? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that we are highly adaptable and really good at improvising in general, from yeah, making things for ourselves, when we go into custody, I was using an orchid bottle to make a smoking device, so I think usually we do okay. And the thing that I saw mainly in the cross at the time was, people quickly got onto programs with the assistance of other, of services as well as, on their own bat, like OHE, OST, and then started switching over to using what was available, which was more ice and, tablets, pills, anything that
mm,
alternatives. You might have your first preference, but then you can always go down in tiers to other layers within that.
Yeah. I mean, on a local level here, what I remember, because I was working in the NSPs during COVID still, so it was a pretty crazy time. But buying drugs was quite interesting because I noticed dealers like taking real precautions, like wearing gloves, to just even
Mm.
handle the drugs and money, or masking up, that sort of thing, or going out of their way to help make supply happen and stuff. So that was really cool to see. I feel like dealers are often underestimated. Like, they're real people that do care about the people they're selling to most of the time. Like, so yeah, that's what I remember. But a lot of systems changes happened too. And yeah, but you're right, Joel. I remember too that the prices of meth went sky high here, like almost triple. And that was,
Wow.
yeah, I think that was because there was a healthy supply, but it was more that ironically, the COVID payments happened. So that's why they jumped the prices up, because people could afford that with the extra money. And then it went back down again after those payments stopped, which was interesting. But I did also notice the supply routes change in that time as well. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend I had a friend who yeah, I was in New South Wales. I was in Sydney during COVID and working in an NSP as well. Because the NSP workers we had vulnerabilities, additional health vulnerabilities, and so I was like, "There's no way you're leaving home. Uh, I don't want to put anyone else's health unnecessarily at risk." And so, yeah, just hearing the ways that people were kind of like finding solutions or working
Mm.
around kind of those challenges. I had a friend who, uses meth pretty regularly, and he found that the quality really went down. While yeah, prices sometimes went up or prices were the
Mm.
same, but the quality was lower. And yeah, for him, it was kind of, and then having those extra payments, he sort of was like, well, maybe I don't need to use meth as much at the moment because I'm kind of like I feel like I've got all this extra money and I can buy myself a new bed and set myself up for work. And so it was like, yeah, he had a bit more hope, or he had a bit more, could plan a little bit more because of that extra income. And so it was interesting to see the way that that then influenced his patterns of use. Like sure, yeah, like you didn't want, you get a bit annoyed if you're paying top dollar for not that great of quality. But yeah, there were those other benefits I saw that then when those payments were reduced again, like he kind of just fell back into the fear, only being able to work out what was happening on that day, and that makes a lot of sense when you're managing a tight budget.
True. So true.
And look, and just before we move on to there was one other point I was thinking about in terms of, how we substitute or we find another thing that's gonna, meet our need. Um, and like a lot of people used to be crushing pills and using those to inject, and then the formulation on the coating changed, and then word got around pretty quickly that that you weren't going to have a good time or with this new formulation, and so then people stopped using them, and so like yeah, I think our communities are really responsive to when things change, and then they work around it or they find alternatives, and that kind of resilience is always great to see.
Oh, so true. I was going to say that too and echo what Candice said, which was, yeah, we're so resourceful, like, because we have to be, like, and pointing out the prison, like people using in prison is such a great example of that. There's no, pretty much, apart from us going in and doing harm reduction education in prisons, there's really no
Mm.
harm reduction tools, but they're still finding ways to do things. So yeah, I always think that's just speaks
Yeah,
to our resourcefulness. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right, well,
making
let's
cut
maybe
downs
let's
and taking them in.
yeah,
The guys to
exactly.
do. Yeah, yeah. I got banned from the prison once for smuggling fits and tobacco in.
Ah,
But But I've seen people at MSEC doing that too, like making, so transforming a fit that's this long into a fit that's
Oh,
this long so that it's, able to
yes,
be gotten in. And if you take, like, I would just say to anyone, take one for yourself and a couple to sell so that you're both serving as in yourself so that you've got one that's safe. And then you can also share the resources amongst others as well as benefit yourself.
yeah. Oh, those jail fits are amazing.
And the other
Yeah,
one I
all
was
of those
thinking
little
of,
tips and tricks.
Yeah.
yeah, that's not necessarily harm reduction related, but they take your earrings when you're under custody. So a lot of us would take like the knobs off the hairbrush. You buy a hairbrush and use those to like put in your holes so they don't close over while you're in
Oh,
custody.
wow. Even that's a resourceful thing.
Yeah, people
Amazing.
really are so like creative,
Yeah.
and they need to be. I've seen Vietnamese guys make like burner lanterns. I had one around here somewhere. I should have brought it out of a perfume bottle, a shoelace or a piece of thread, and a like plastic thing at the top that is used to smoke with, so that you're not always using a
Oh,
lighter and gas. So you can fill it
oh
up with
yeah.
Kero, and yeah, use that because so it's made from recyclable materials, but it's also
Yeah.
reducing your
Yeah,
impact by buying plastic or refillable lighters.
Good point.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
recycled thing. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's a bit like those clipper lighters where you can like re refill them and get replacement parts. I kind of
Yeah.
like that approach. Yeah, where
Yeah.
you can. It's
Mm.
got a bit of longevity, rather than that kind of single-use plastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we
Actually,
move down from the kind of international down to a little bit more of a local level? And yeah, like I was thinking about uh, like Tasmania's been has had like 100% green energy for a really long time. And what's it like? Like I'm sure that Tasmania's not experiencing blackouts every time the sun goes out or the wind stops
that's
blowing.
a really good point. It's well, from experience, it's been great. Like it's really quite reliable. But you're right, Joel, like we are often the first state to introduce like like I think we're the first to go to paper shopping bags, paper straws, like recyclable single-use plastics for like cutlery and stuff for restaurants, etc. Um, and it's interesting having spoken to Candice and not to spoil what you've done, but like the difference there, because on a local level, harm reduction wise, we haven't really done those measures. But that doesn't mean like that there's not a crossover there. And I must admit, I feel there is a tension, because, and I've experienced this from local community, because I guess like I should point out too that we have a really hardcore environmentally activist community down here, like people that do the tree sits or, literally there was a woman who lived in a tree for a few months, like to protect the trees from being, because they're old growth forests, they're being logged for just wood chips and stuff, like it's just awful. And also the blockades, that sort of thing, literally training yourself to machinery. It's those hardcore people. Well, so those people are also part of our community, like there are peers in that community. So, but for a while, like some of that community, like they so cared about the planet that they would put rather like they were recycling their injecting equipment because it's plastic, but it wasn't out of ignorance. It was actually a decision made because they would rather put their planet first before their health. Like,
Mm.
so that's a real example that, like, and I was saying before when we were chatting, like, often drug users are not considered in these environmental conversations, but like we're directly impacted, like as saying before, like the service disruption that could happen, the supply disruption that happens, but even down to those people that are like thinking so consciously around single-use plastics. I'm talking plastic, I'm not talking the old blue lady syringes that are glass that you can, really properly sterilize and try it that way. So yeah, it was a really interesting time of us doing like talking through those conversations with those guys, like because if you get an infection or something, you end up in ED. All those like the same supplier that supplies our NSPs of equipment, supplies all the hospitals too. Like we're all using those single-use plastics. Like it'll get used kind of more in those settings, like, you know, like to prevent that sort of thing. But there is a real tension there that I can't deny, because environmental values are reduce plastic waste, and harm reduction values is never reuse injecting equipment if you can. So I see the tension, but I also see there's like it's not also opposing, because we like, and like Candice can speak to this, but there's those harm reduction environmental measures that we can do, like even safe and appropriate disposal of sharps and used injecting equipment biohazard is an environmental measure in itself. And NSPs like and peer harm reduction is also environmental, I think, because you know, you're sort of preventing public waste to some degree by having NSPs, but peers can distribute equipment, carpool, like we've talked about, like those measures to get equipment out there, contain it, all of that. Also, another thing I might mention is in Tassie for a long time, because we take transactional stats, as everyone does with the NSPs. One is, did you return? That used to be a thing we picked, but in the end we started just measuring it by the times we changed the big 240 litre bins. But it used to be a question, and a lot of people would say burn or return, because a lot of people that are using in rural remote areas in Tassie, there's pockets everywhere, will often find it easier to burn the material. Now, I've wondered what's more environmental in that regard. Like, I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts, but those are my thoughts from a Tassie context, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Em, and thanks for raising, that kind of the intersection, and that we don't always, what we assume, the characteristics of a particular group of activists or advocates are, and then, it's not always as we assume. If I was trying to save a tree from being logged, I'd need to kind of stay awake during the night as part of that. So I can see how there is I could see the link could be there, and not just for stimulants, but
definitely, like we're definitely already, our community is already engaging in environmental ethics, like definitely. So
yeah, I think someone in the chat said, don't forget about the apple bong, which I was like, who can forget?
I think that was maybe my first foray into bong smoking.
For me it was either an apple or a like aluminium can with the pricks in. You just
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, maybe back to that point about the return or burn. When we are disposing of syringes through the program, all of those yellow bins end up getting incinerated, and that we would expect that there's some sort of environmental standards around the the fumes or whatever that come from that, because obviously burning plastic's not a great idea. But I think that the hospitals, by their, like what you say, health, we've got that complexity between wanting to control infection, do infection control, and again in COVID there was like a lot of PPE that was just like they used it once and then they had to get it off because you didn't want to spread infection. So yeah, there is this real tension. But what might be some practical ways that we actually are kind of reducing the impact of NSPs?
Well, I was going to say one of the things that I was doing during COVID was I had a picture up of a mask caught around a bird. I can't remember what kind, seagull or something. So when you do remove a mask, always rip the ear things off, because they can get caught in nature, animals.
That's good to know, Candy.
But the other thing I was thinking as we were talking about that, I think it's really hard to live in an environment like Tasmania and not be so aware of the impact of living in the planet in general, because it's so beautiful and untouched and pristine, and so as well as people go down there to do that kind of activism. I think in the mainland we get a little bit more distant from that. And all of these things
Mm,
are really complex and takes what I, from my understanding, is doing a life cycle analysis. So you need to understand the whole analysis of the production of the item, the utilization of it, as well as the transport of it, like the weight and all those things involved, the method of transport, and then the way that it's recycled, reused, or disposed of at the other end. And yeah, then whether that's
mm,
from landfill, the impact of that, whether it's from burning or incineration, the impact of that, or
Mm.
the recycling impact. So there's like a whole big thing with environmental things. And if there's any research affiliated people, I think that would be something great to look into,
mm,
like more about like what
Yeah.
the life cycle analysis of our harm reduction
mm,
programs are, even with syringe disposal and stuff. One of the things that I brought along is like these paper fit packs that are used in the city Sydney. So this is a 6 pack of Terumo's water swabs cotton, which are easy to use in a highly populated area where you've got lots of NSPs, OHEs, um, and disposal bins, because we can give those out and there's less plastic. And the other thing I was thinking about when I started brain dumping on this topic was that we don't have to always pick up a piece of plastic to dispose of our stuff in. Emily mentioned using a Milo tin, or using your laundry bottles, or any sort of hard plastic container like a cordial bottle or something to dispose of your sharps in before you take them back to the thing, and doing that maybe in a large thing, so you minimizing your trips. The other thing that is thought of too is that a lot of, particularly on the mainland, not necessarily so in some rural and regional areas or Tassie, but a lot of us use public transport as a given,
Yeah.
whether it be because we can't drive because of the fucking current cannabis laws, or or
Yeah.
just because it's more convenient to get a way to get around cities. So that's some of the impact.
Yeah, definitely, Candice. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, like I don't own a car. I haven't owned a car since I was living in a regional area where it's a lot harder to not own a car. But yeah,
Yeah.
relying on the public transport is a really tangible way of reducing your impact
Yeah.
significantly. Yeah, I just wanted to put a concept in what Candice was saying about that kind of looking at the whole life cycle of a service or a product. It starts to talk to the idea of a circular economy where, we're realizing that we're on a finite planet, and so we have finite resources, and some resources that are renewable and some that are not renewable, and and so yeah, it's a movement that's all about kind of reducing, reusing, repurposing, and like recycling is kind of like the last. Like if you can do all those other things first, that's a lot better than recycling because there's still a lot of energy embedded in the recycling process.
Mm.
Um, but this, like it can be things like picking up furniture from those hard rubbish cleanups, or offering things through Facebook Marketplace for low cost or for free, or sharing things among our networks. Like it might be, I don't know what. I don't. For some reason, in my head, I think of my mum who they buy one magazine and then they share it around all the sisters and my grandmother, and so there's only like one copy of the magazine getting used multiple times. It's those little things that can make a big difference. Um, and then like we've got the kind of like waste reduction, or waste waste mindful, you're thinking mindfully about the waste we're producing as services. So like I can imagine Candice in somewhere like the MSIC where it's full, like it's a clinical service delivery. There are, you've got certain requirements for keeping things safe and infection control. What are some of the things that sorry, what are some of the things that you've done there to initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that I got pulled up on when I worked in our injecting space was I was like cleaning a couple of booths with the same gloves, and someone was like, "No, you've got to change gloves between." And I was like, "Oh, of course, that makes sense because I can't be spreading, in potential infection from one to the other." But I was like, "Oh, that's less gloves." So I think, and anytime you put on a clinical glove, you're meant to wear two pairs. But and health is inherently, one of the most wasteful industries because of that constant balance between, being aseptic and as clean as we can be and not spreading stuff. But I guess, yeah, trying to do what we can. So we had a compost bin for a while there, and we're taking that down to Wayside. It got a bit flyy, so sadly it no longer exists. But I think well managed compost can be done in most kitchens, particularly if you find a local centre or community garden that's willing to take it and do the composting bit for you. You just collect the food scraps. The other thing that we do there is soft plastics recycling again. Luckily, there's another trial by the Soft Plastics Stewardship Council in New South Wales. I have a link to circulate, or you can look it up, where there's certain Woolworths that are participating in that trial. And I often reuse a lot of the bags that our stores come in. They come in these massive like plastic bags. So I've been bringing them back I use them either in a rubbish bin as a bin bag or for my kitty litter when I'm cleaning up the trays.
Oh,
Yeah.
good idea.
I've been
That'd
bringing
be
like
fab.
hordes of plastic. Um, as well as fit wrappers can go in that. A lot of the 3 mils or the front of a BD or a Turumo, the plastic bit, that can go into. You can put that inside a chip packet or other kind of soft plastics if you're worried about walking into the supermarket with your 3 mil Turumo on display.
That's such a
Um,
great idea, Candice. Like, because I know people who like to separate their plastics out from the sharps to put in the sharps bin anyway. Like, but sometimes when people would bring those into the outlet, we would still have to bin all those plastics in the same bin, and people would get quite upset about that. But now I think about your strategy, that'd be so good for some people that like to separate already. Like,
yeah, and of course, if it's not contaminated anyway, it's got to be like,
yeah.
Just
without food
running
or
low
blood
on
on it.
battery. So if I go offline, it's because my battery died. Just so you know.
That's okay.
Hopefully,
I'm sure me and Candice can keep talking. And we were talking before, Candice, about like different wrappers of syringes and that sort of thing. Like, because I know that back in the day, Terumo's used to be a complete plastic wrapper, but now you're saying that they have a half plastic, half paper, like the BDs. So I think that's a good step in the right direction too.
yeah, because in theory you could like on both halves of this, you could put the paper side in the paper bit and then the plastic side in your soft plastics. Sadly, that
Yeah.
is only in New South Wales at the moment, but there are quite a few online ones if you've got a bit of resourcing and can pay that you can actually collate stuff yourself and then pay them for a bag to send it in and they
Oh,
will take it for you. I sent Richard some links as well. The other one that I do a lot of is blister pack recycling. So I take Subutex every day and there's a fucking shitload of tablets. I've got like a big yogurt tub full of them. So I just
I
take them
do.
back. And I looked that up. That's Pharmacycle, the website, and they are actually nationwide in every state and territory, except in the Northern Territory, they're only in like Palmerston, which is really odd. Sorry, Northern Territory people. Maybe get on board to harassing them to having more sites. But that's when I found that was really good because I felt like I was making. Well, I just know now that I collect them how much waste I was generating by doing that.
They
I
do a
suppose,
lot. Yeah.
yeah. I
So,
suppose methadone bottles are probably recyclable too. Anything you just check the number on the bottom. If it's got the little triangle thing, it's got the number, and you check what your council accepts. Most lids are not, pumps are not.
oh,
Um,
yeah.
anything like that, you will need to take to a TerraCycle location, which are at most Sephora's, Loccitans, body shops. Like there's heaps of TerraCycle, TRRA cycle sites that do all that other streams of things that aren't through our main plastic recycling. And there's more councils getting on board with even soft plastics in some areas in Sydney and even compost or food waste, like new recycling streams. So we're crawling along, getting better as we go.
So
But yeah, I would
good.
say always check in your local area.
Yeah, definitely. And it reminds me too, Candice, like how we are talking before, like using other things for puncture-proof bins that aren't the yellow bins. Like yeah, I know for Tassie, it's a state-based legislation that actually states that you just have to have a secured puncture proof. It doesn't have to be, it just has to be contained correctly. So not in a glass bottle that's going to break, or like, a milk carton that can actually have a needle go through it or something like that. But I'm guessing that's state to state type legislation, and like just bring up again, like distributing those cardboard packs, like how does that go with your legislation, and like have you had any issues there around that sort of thing?
Yeah, you're right. It does vary by state. In New South Wales, currently, the law is that NSPs need to offer a disposal container or option when they distribute a unit of a sharp item. But you can carry syringes. You just can't admit to using them for anything illicit.
Yeah,
It's not
same
illegal
as
to have
here.
them on you.
Yeah, that's the same as Taz. It's just like, unless you had been busted with some drugs on you as well, then the equipment can be like further evidence to your possession charge. But apart from that, it shouldn't impact you. Like if it's just on its own.
Yeah,
Cool. That's good to know.
and it
And
does vary. Yeah. I mean, I
uh,
know until recently in Queensland, I'm pretty sure that you weren't even allowed to carry equipment like that. It was illicit. So yeah,
wow,
yeah,
I didn't know that. And I was going to ask too, Candice, like looking at the size of those cardboard boxes, like could they be put in a standard NSP vending machine? They look like they could
yes,
be.
they
Yeah,
are exactly vending machine size, and they're in the vending
yeah,
machines in this area. Yeah, so
that's
it's maybe
unreal.
8 by 12 or something. Yeah.
That's perfect. Like, and we are talking before, like, because I've experienced a lot where people just want to grab because we do pre-packs too, but rip them out and want to get rid of the bin immediately. And doing sweeps, it's like the most common thing I would find. Um, and I get it. It's bulky. You want to like travel light, and as you said too, Candice, there's lots of bins around, like go to a local public toilet, you could shove a couple of 1 mils in there, fine. So a lot of people operate that way anyway. You do find the black packs everywhere. So yeah, I think it would be awesome to have them in vending machines. Yeah.
Yeah, I know they're coming from the central supplier in New South Wales. So I would say definitely look into those if you
Yeah,
can in your
amazing. Amazing.
local area.
So good.
Um,
I thought the
Yeah,
only
and I guess the other thing we were
I
talking about before is that thing of just like people don't necessarily want to have fits on them. Like if you're running around doing illicit things to get your illicit drugs because of the unregulated illicit market that are so fucking expensive, and
mm,
our really fucking shit social safety net of like living on $47 a day on New Start. Um, of course, if you get done doing a crime, you don't want to have it. If you don't know, you want to have as least as possible because then they don't
yeah,
link
makes
one to the
sense.
other. I know. So, and either carry or stash them so that I could get rid of them quickly, or go once I had my money and everything sorted that I could then go grab them. But it is better with the
Yeah.
cardboard that once people are doing that stuff of grabbing what you need and discarding, that at least the cardboard can disintegrate in the environment and not stay
Yeah.
around forever because every piece of plastic we've ever made is still on the earth, which is a
Yeah.
great fact I like to always bang on about.
A good one for this webinar. Wow. Like, actually, yeah, I was thinking about those boxes too, Candice. Like, I feel like they're less identifiable as an injecting related item, because the fit packs are like, like once you know what they are, like, so yeah, but that could be anything, packaging from anything, which is
Yeah,
really discreet as well.
yeah.
Pretty cool.
I'm
Mm.
Yeah.
wondering if this is really great. We want to move into like talking about some practical things for like extreme heat or natural disaster. Look,
Hmm.
I believe that the duos have a couple of our able members created some
Yeah.
resources that we wanted to have a little chat about.
I
Uh,
wanted to mention Riding the Wave, Disaster Readiness for People Who Use Drugs. That's by Quiver. And I've been dying to get into that resource myself, but I just know it's going to be good because they always do great resources. Shout out to you guys. But that's one I definitely wanted to mention, but I feel like Candice could talk more than I could to this.
Yeah, I can't find the link for it right now, but I did see on Harm Reduction Victoria's amazing Instagram last year that they had some really good harm reduction and the heat stuff about
Yeah,
monitoring
awesome.
yourself, in the heat, ways to keep cool, all that kind of thing. And we were also floating before about the use of shared spaces, going to the library, to the
Yeah.
Westfield, to the community centre, to the NSP, to MSIC to keep cool. And that in Sydney last year they did have um, dedicated like cool down spaces with, I think it was water, heat, and like there's like bottles of water and like cool spaces that you could attend on. But they were badly well planned, badly initiated in my opinion, because they were like only announced on the day or so before, which is not very helpful. But it was only when it was over a certain temperature. So I think it's better for us to have that thing in hand where we already
Yeah.
have our strategies. And I myself go to work when it's hot because I don't have aircon. I don't want aircon until I have a
Mm.
battery and I'm able to produce my own power. I don't want to be drawing that much from the grid. And keeping your air cons on 23 or above, like you don't ever want to go down below that. It's just too fucking cold.
Mm.
It's bad for your health because you are then going between like 40 and 18, so you can make yourself sick, but also it
Yeah.
draws much more power. So, and they run optimally. It doesn't make them work as hard to get to that.
Mm. It's interesting,
Yeah,
Candy.
100%.
'Cause when I hear you say that, I'm like, yeah, amazing. But then I think of Tasmania context, and I think honestly, we need heating, heating facilities in the winter, and it's a serious issue for homeless people in Tassie getting hypothermia. So,
Mm.
yeah, it's almost like we need the other end a little bit. But that's climate change; things get hotter and colder. So, yeah, on the other end.
Yeah, and I think we all have a pretty good concept of like coldness and like the dangers of cold. I think like a friend of mine did a master's thesis on extreme heat and like attitudes in the community and strategies, and what she found is that we kind of almost have a bias towards extreme heat. Like we think, oh, that's nice because we want to warm ourselves up or we want to like get out and swim or enjoy the sun. And so often we can underestimate the dangers of extreme heat, and having a plan of where to go is really important. Those shared spaces that Candice talked about. But also because some of the drugs we use make us hotter. And so like we're
Mm.
going to feel that heat earlier than other people are going to feel it. I don't know about you, but I sweat a lot if I use stimulants. And so like
Yeah.
I really have strategies like I get ice packs from the fridge and put them on my neck, which helps like even just reduce. It might not even reduce my temperature, but it will help me with the psychology of like dealing with the heat and
Using those points at your wrist and your neck, and under your arms are pressure points that will bring your core temperature down. You bring your core temperature down, it brings the rest of your temperature down. So
Mm,
that's a great one for people. We'll often do that at MC2, like put a cold thing on across people's
really?
necks in the heat. But same with heating, warming up too. Like if you put, those little heat pads that you
Hand
can, yeah,
warmers.
the hand warmers, you can use
Yeah.
those in the same strategic way. If you bring the core up, then it's going to
Really?
warm the rest of the body.
Wow, I didn't actually know that. But I also have often thought that meth, particularly, would be an amazing drug for like if you're trying to manage being homeless because it does increase that temperature. And you're cold, you got it like it's probably, I know it can sometimes be safer to be awake, through the night and sleep in the day. So it really makes sense to me. It also suppresses appetite if you don't have much money for food. There's so many functions to it I could see, but something else I was going to say in relation to what you were saying, Candice, but I can't remember.
Oh, just thinking the same with opiates too. Like I know in
Oh
Melbourne
yeah,
when I first started using it, I was like, let's go get a warm me up because it was so
yeah,
fucking cold. And when you
that's
have
warm me up.
an opiate, it wraps in a nice warm fuzzy cloud. And I mean, half the time I don't know whether it's a perimenopausal
Yeah,
perimenopausal heat flash or
I was
because I'm
about
on
to say
Subutex
that.
that I'm always running warmer than
Yeah,
the rest of the time. I'd be like in a t-shirt and winter going, oh, is this like one or the other? And same with methadone or other. Yeah, I feel it's like a lot of
that's
us
so
run warmer.
true.
we've
Candice
got a
is
couple of
funny.
questions.
Okay.
Someone from the audience has asked about recycling of nitrous cartridges. Does
Oh,
anyone have any thoughts on that?
good
I
question.
would have thought that maybe they are similar to aerosols. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd want to probably check before I chuck it in the recycle bin. But they are metal, so I
Yeah.
can also see how that could be recyclable in some way.
That is such a good question, and I don't know myself, but I'd love to know as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then we've got another comment about the tragedy of prohibition in the illicit market is that it's really difficult to get information on the environmental impacts of different substances and how they're manufactured and
Yeah.
distribution.
True. True.
Um,
That's making me think too, actually, because again, I was talking to Nick, my colleague here, and when I was sort of talking about the impact of wiping out natural, like poppy industry and that sort of thing. Well, there we do have synthetics, we've got labs, it's almost like a counter argument to that. But yeah, that sort of just made me think of what you were saying, Joel. Like,
yeah, and even to a certain degree, like if you're a medicinal cannabis user, like that's all grown indoors, and so like there is a sort of climate control circumstances, but not everyone's accessing it from that illicit market, and
yeah.
yeah.
Well, if you think especially around like say indigenous communities that use drugs, like I'm thinking like Carver, for example, like, that's not a lab situation. They're not in a situation to substitute that synthetically. Like it's a real embedded cultural thing and that natural thing. Yeah, so it doesn't solve all the problems. Yeah. But
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about kava in that way. Yeah, like it's
mm,
definitely a cultivated crop, and there's like cultural and social um, practices that go around that. I'm thinking of like in Fiji, that's where I've experienced kava.
yeah.
But I'm also thinking like the Pacific Islands, they're like our close neighbors, and
Mm,
there are a lot of them. Like Kiribati is going underwater, going under the sea level, and so. Yeah, like it's not just about like Australia's exposure to climate change as one of the first like
yeah.
we are, and it's recognised that we're exposed, but yeah, Pacific neighbours even more so, and so yeah, I also think about like what's our social responsibility to our
Yeah.
neighbourhood.
So true, Joel. Like, because I feel like environmental crisis kind of hits marginalized communities first and the hardest, like, so yeah.
Yeah, I guess
So,
that's some of the things that we need to, consider in our impact. Some of the other things that I think I had written down that I haven't bridged yet were that like reducing, you can use boiled water if are housed and have that
yeah,
privilege. You can boil water in a kettle and wait till that cools, swab your shot glass and use that to mix up with instead of using the plastic vials.
yeah.
You can use soap and water to clean your skin or injecting site before use and boil your utensils to sterilize them instead of like cleaning stuff with swabs all the time. That of course, within reason and be sensible about it. And
Yeah.
using a dedicated spoon for yourself to mix up in instead of the plastics, where the ones they're better. They're not gonna release crap that can take heat, and also you can boil it regularly to
Such
mix
good
up it. And
points. And I just
um,
thought too, Candice, like the straps, the blue straps, if you can get your own tawny, that's yours, that you can look after. Like yeah,
Yeah, we
less
often
waste.
get asked to those at MSIC, and I just point people to like eBay or Amazon. You can get them really cheap. Probably eBay over Jeff's Market. We don't want to be supporting that either if we can avoid it. And the other one I've got is AI, which we haven't even covered, but
Yeah, true.
reducing your impact by not using that wherever you have to. I just figure I've never used AI that I know of. Like, I don't want to. I'd rather learn to do something if I don't know how to do it or how to think about it. I don't want it to write my emails for me or any of that stuff. And you can always find out how to turn Copilot or any of those tools off. With
Oh,
Google, every time you search, if you don't want AI, just put minus and AI in your search string.
oh, I didn't know
But
that.
there is also probably add-ons that you can get to take that thing off, or use DuckDuckGo, which is more
Yeah,
less
I'm
stalky.
I'm very
Oh,
vegan.
I
But
think I have been
um,
wondering though. Oh, sorry, Joel, you go.
yeah, I'm really passionate about that, the environmental impacts of AI and like being really mindful about it. And then but also asking questions like Um, there's 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 a little project we at Able are working on with these software people, and so we asked the question to them, and then they came back with their kind of carbon zero plan, and um, yeah, a whole heap of documentation on how they monitor and reduce their environmental impact, and then how they offset it, and what their plans are for the future in terms of like, yeah, where they want to be in terms of the response. And so like, yeah, like um, it's not all might not always be possible to get away from the AI in the current paradigm, but when we do, it's like partnering with those services or those organizations that are like using renewable sources of energy, or thinking about how they're reducing their water impact.
Yeah, like, do you mind me saying something to that, Joel? Like, um, with the internet censorship that's going on with harm reduction and drug user stuff, like, I think I can see printed resources and magazines making a comeback. I mean, I think we would like to do that in Tas, but that's counter the doing digital stuff, which reduces environmental impact. But I just wonder, I guess we can't always be perfect environmentalists, but like harm reduction, it's about reducing the harm. So if we can reduce the environmental harm, like I can see the philosophy just aligns so beautifully there. Like, because, especially when I think about doing prison harm reduction, like we talked about before, no tools exactly in there, but it's really just like, and talking to Leah from Able, who gave me lots of advice, it's really the golden rule is like do the best with what you've got. It's the same with the environmental approach, like, so yeah, like there is that tension, like especially again thinking in terms of like environmental, don't use less plastic in harm reduction injecting, like don't always use new equipment, like so you can't have single use. So there's a tension, but when you think harm reduction terms, like environmentalism practices are harm reduction environmentally. So I see there's a nice marriage. And it's so nice to have this conversation because, like I said, like I don't see it happening. But there are hardcore environmental activists putting their health on the line, already engaging in environmental ethics that are our peers, and we're the most affected or the first affected in these situations. Like, so it's so nice, Joel, like to have this conversation and like finally do this. Yeah, so thank you.
Oh, no worries, Em. And like we're getting similar feedback from the audience. Someone in the audience commented that clients and students come into the NSP and ask about environmental impact, and we're not used to having that conversation. But then this person looked it up on the funder's website, and they were able to find lots of information. So that's a really positive thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know.
We've only got a few minutes left, so I'm just wondering if you wanted to kind of share any final thoughts before we call it a day.
I guess my only thing, I kind of did some final thoughts before, but I would say we need an approach that um, doesn't force us to choose between our health and the planet. And I think that's harm reduction, like environmentally and in drug use. Like, yeah, that's it from me.
Yeah, I guess just if you don't know, try and find it out. I see a lot of people doing wish cycling stuff, reduce and remember the way that things go. So start with your reduction. How can I reduce what I utilize day to day? Then what can I reuse? Like we reuse everything in my household. Like if a t-shirt or something's come to the end of its life, it gets used as a rag or
Yes.
to patch another hole in something else. And same what I was talking about, like, using your own metal spoon and keeping it boiled, or buying a tourniquet from a site and, cleaning it once a week in 9% so it's clean, and of course, and using it yourself, but reusing that instead of disposable, just making the switches where you can. And then your last thing, recycle. And yeah, I love that thing. I mean, I often reframe this stuff to people because they're like, oh, I've had to go and I had my whole house is furnished with stuff from the side of the road, and I'm like, you're reusing stuff. That's great. That's
Yeah,
stuff that didn't go to landfill. Like, and they're like, oh yeah, and I'm like, reframe that stuff. Don't look at
yeah,
it as a bad thing. We've all done that. Everybody's done that. I think Aussies are the kings of doing that. That's fucking amazing. Be proud
yeah.
of that. So reframe where you need to, and yeah. And I guess the other thing I'm thinking with this is that we need more research. And I agree that like the fact
Mm,
that things are illicit, there's always going to be those gaps. But on the things that we do know, or even that could be something that you can make a point on to go, this is what we know. These are the areas of the life cycle analysis we can look at, but like these are the gaps because of this fucking huge glaring problem of illicit nature that we
yeah.
can't research. And yeah, ethical, mindful research as well. I always advocate for, and in partnership with drug user orgs like ABLE, and you're a local org, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
Candice, I've got a PhD topic for you now, which is the costs. Like, what was I thinking? Like, what is the environmental cost to prohibition? I'd love to know. So, someone doing a
Mm,
PhD on it, please.
Ooh,
Am I
yeah,
yeah.
that's a great
Candice?
topic.
I don't
Look,
have a degree, mate, except in bullshit and life, like a Durian life
Oh,
experience.
you
that
never
that's
know.
that's
Probably,
that's 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 just as good.
yeah,
Yeah.
and probably
My
more
infield research, as
expensive.
I call it.
I,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was going to say it's
definitely more
probably more
expensive.
practical.
Yeah, yeah,
Candice, I always say I spent more on this degree than my own uni degree because I
yeah.
can calculate just in dosing costs alone. I don't even want to think of the illicit costs, but anyway, sorry.
Yeah, my infield research cost me a lot, but
That's it. I
it
love it.
also
Oh,
benefits a lot.
thanks everyone. I mean, it's been a really robust discussion,
Oh,
and
it's been
we
great.
managed to fill an hour, which yeah, I'm really excited by that. Yeah, look, I guess my final thoughts are like often I can get a little bit overwhelmed like by how big the problem is, and it feels like no one's doing that, but doing anything. But I think we've demonstrated here that when we focus on that kind of local level and we talk to our peers, we realize actually there's things happening all the time already. We're taking action on climate change, and that's really exciting to know. Um, yeah. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Look after yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Candice.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Candice.
thank
Thanks,
you. Thank
Emily.
you so much.
Bye.